Greetings sailors and welcome back to World of Warships and a Patreon replay. And I'm actually going to start this off with an apology to my patrons for the last couple of months because there's been, I think, 3 or 4 replay submissions that I've essentially ended up missing doing just because I've been so thoroughly disorganised and feeling rubbish as a result of, disorganised as a result of feeling rubbish, but then feeling more rubbish as a result of being disorganised. That's the wonderful thing about depression is it does sometimes form this wonderful little feedback loop of unpleasantness. But yeah, I am trying to pick myself up a bit at the start of this year. So here we are with indeed a Patreon replay, and this is from MartenLudens, and he's in a ship you may have forgotten existed. This is HMS Gallant, and it is a Tier 6 premium British destroyer. It's actually been around for a little while. I think it was around the time they did the tie-in with Dunkirk. I think it came out at the same time as that. It was one of the ships you could play in Dunkirk as opposed to the specially created destroyers that they did for that, which made it a little unusual. It might have even, I think it must have predated the Dunkirk event actually. It certainly predates the rest of the tech tree destroyers, and it does therefore then differ a bit in a couple of regards. It doesn't have the defensive hydro, and it does have a speed boost. It also has different smokes, which are, I think, either the Japanese or the German smokes in terms of their length. They're not super long lasting, but they're certainly obviously a lot more long lasting than the short duration smokes you get with the tech tree ships. Anyway, so that was a nice first kill, and that enemy destroyer made the cardinal mistake of smoking up and then just sitting still in the smoke. Now, if you're in that situation, you know there's another destroyer there, and they're probably going to have their torpedoes primed, you know, unless it's a Pan-Asian destroyer or an Asashio or something, then yes, you do not just sit in your smoke and hope for the best, because probably a bad thing will happen to you, as it did there. At this stage, though, he's making the choice to go to the middle, and as you can see, his allies are... I mean, they're kind of a bit outnumbered on this flank anyway, but they're being chased up the 10 line by a destroyer. Not a destroyer, a submarine. Their own sub is on that flank as well. So rather than go and have to try and deal with the sub while everyone else is shooting at him, instead he's made the decision he's going to go and grab the middle instead. And I think that is kind of fair enough. If the sub wasn't there, then it might have been a better idea to go and try and do damage to those ships that are trying to press up the 9-10 line and maybe screen for your allies a bit. But given the circumstances, given the submarine being there, this is a 2-sub game, then I kind of don't blame Martin for making that decision. So that does mean, however, they've grabbed the middle, so that's the positive side of that. And they are now in a position to get the A cap as well, so that might well give them a nice lead in points. But his team is fairly heavily concentrated on this side, so they kind of have to get a bit of a move on. The problem is that there are several enemy ships over here as well that do seem to be quite comfortably holding their own against the allied ships that are here. Now this is a bit cheeky, but there are no cruisers nearby that might immediately pose a problem, so he takes his chances to set a fire, and does so. So that's going to be some ticking damage, and now he can try and get the A cap, which is a good thing, because the enemy team has finally gotten around to having a go at capping C. So they need to maintain that cap advantage and that points gain advantage if they are to stay ahead of the fact that his own team is being a bit wishy-washy at the moment on this side. Tempting, very tempting. You can see he wants to open fire there, but no. Capping takes priority. But then he decides, hey-ho, you know, let's use the smoke for it, actually. And does it anyway. And he might have even gotten away without using the smoke, to be honest. This New Mexico is clearly concentrating on other things and have decided that backing away slowly from the enemy is the way to go. And it's not going to work out for them forever. Far from it. I think there aren't that many things here that can overmatch. I think it is just the Warspite that can overmatch the Valour that new mechs. But even so, that's not going to help if somebody decides to set you on fire. So, as you can see, the one remaining ship, the non-submarine that was on the other side was Königsberg near the B cap. I'm not sure why they wandered over there on their own, but yeah, that did not end well for them. So the middle is now ripe for taking, and I think MartenLudens is well aware of that. But he's also very, very tempted by that low health for attacker. He's just tantalisingly out of range right now, and also he's having a go at blind firing him. You can see, unlike that earlier destroyer, Marten is actually moving around in his smoke to counter that somewhat. Right, there we go. So now we're in range of the attacker. Can we get the kill? And the answer is no. Sadly, someone else does. But he got the New Mexico kill, at least. He just had a bit of a stutter there. I'm not sure why. I think maybe it was just two ships dying at the same time, or very close at the same time. So as for the other enemy ships here, well, the New Mexico might be down, and the New York might be looking not very healthy, but that Julio Cesare is looking very healthy indeed, and they're actually going to remain very healthy right up until nearly the end of the battle. I mean, they've taken a bit of damage there, but rather than try and go for them, I mean, there's a submarine, there's the Viribus Unitis, and in theory there's the New York and the Warspite. You know, all should be trying to take out that one ship, but yeah, the Viribus Unitis really charging in face first. I think those are all hanging back around the cap still, so it's not going to go well for the Viribus Unitis, and that is how the Cesare and the New York are going to get to survive for a while longer.
Torpedoes dead ahead.
And there's another low health cruiser. Man, that is just much too tempting. And again, given that there aren't that many fast firing ships, I mean, the Alba is probably the fastest firing thing here, but they don't have the opportunity to fire at him just now. Although, you know, they're going to get the opportunity to in a moment. But yeah, again, Marten taking the risk that he's not going to be the focus, that the Cavour is going to be the focus. And it is kind of paying off. The Mutsu does have pretty powerful guns, but the chances are is they'd be firing AP, so that wouldn't be so bad. It's the Alba's high explosive that would be the main issue. It does actually end up there being not those Mutsu 16-inch guns, though. It's the Deadgraf Space torpedoes that finished off that Cavour, which is unfortunate. But what is, however, a lot more fortunate is the Mutsu, despite knowing full well that Marten is here, doesn't slow his speed at all or try and maneuver. No, they just charge straight towards the Warspite and take a bunch of torpedoes in the process. Between the torpedoes and Marten getting a fire previously and now trying to set a fire once again, although never mind, the Warspite gets the kill. Yeah, he's now up to nearly 90k damage, which is not bad. Things are overall looking quite dicey, though. They still have the two caps. The Warspite is very unhealthy, though. There's a very high health Iron Duke. The Julio Cesare is still pretty healthy. The New York's still alive, and the Alba also about half health. So yeah, this isn't looking so good. This is looking very, very close. We have 3 ships left versus the enemy's 5. One of those 5 is one of the enemy subs as well, so they are pretty damn sneaky. They do still also have one of their own subs, but they're currently being chased by the 2 battleships, and they can outrun those 2 battleships, but of course the depth charges are, you know, they extend the effective range. Even if you're running away underwater, you can't necessarily escape damage. But that Cachalot will end up surviving till the end of the match. So the temptation here is maybe try and open fire again, but he's being a bit more cautious now. I think partly because he knows that the Iron Duke is much more likely to have their extremely nasty high explosive loaded. But as we see there, they're actually firing some AP shells. So that is somebody that at least potentially knows the value of switching shells, and so will probably know the value of the high explosive anyway. The main danger with a lot of the British battleships is that they will just fire high explosive at you, regardless of circumstances, which is not nice when you're in a destroyer, whereas most other battleship types will have to specifically switch to high explosive shells. But yeah, there's every chance that the Iron Duke would in fact have high explosive loaded. But even though it's got a fairly long turret traverse and it proved to be firing AP, he decided to play it safe anyway, which is probably not the worst idea. So you may have noticed another torpedo hit pop up there. That enemy sub did not dive and took the torpedo, and I guess he maybe thought they would have dived, but no. So he fires, gets spotted, and is able to finish off the sub, which is nice. But it has had the effect of he suddenly goes, uh-oh, I'd better move because now I'm spotted, and that, of course, has reset the cap. They are still 2 caps ahead of the enemy team, 2 caps to 1. But it possibly would have been the better idea to actually complete the cap. I think he was just that eager to fire that maybe he temporarily forgot the sub was there, or I don't know. We all make these kind of mistakes. It's not proved to be a bad mistake in the scheme of things, but it has also kind of ruined the element of surprise. I mean, having said that, they knew he was in the C cap, so it wasn't that much of a surprise. So having darted forwards and come out of the C cap, he's now getting very tempted by the idea of maybe taking out that healthy Iron Duke. But the Iron Duke, of course, is going to be well aware that he's there. They are absolutely, if they've got any sense to them, they're going to have loaded the high explosive, and that stuff is very, very nasty indeed. So there is no element of surprise here. The only thing that Marten really has going for him is that the manoeuvrability at this close range of a slow battleship like the Iron Duke means that if he survives the hit, and there's the high explosive, if he survives long enough to get his torpedoes around, and the angles aren't that great, and the HE doesn't just completely nuke his torpedo launchers, he can get the kill. It's a risk though, and it does cost him a lot of health. It is going to come off worse for the Iron Duke though. I think the Iron Duke, maybe they were just banking on RNG being on their side. I mean, that really is what it came down to for that Iron Duke. In the Iron Duke situation, I would not have done what they did. I would not have basically come round the island like that and hoped that I would just be able to get this high health destroyer. And I think, honestly, the main reason Marten did that is because he had so much health left. If he'd been on sort of even half health or below, he or even lower than, more than that rather, he'd be dead right now. But yeah, it's the kind of thing where if you can do it successfully, you can take down a high health ship at the end of a match and you have the hit points to burn. It's a risk, but it's a sort of calculated risk that can obviously work out quite well in your favour. But yeah, it can also go very, very badly wrong. But yeah, anyway, it did work out. He got a big chunk more damage. And at this point, he's decided to be a lot more cautious because instead of ninjaing that last kill, actually let the sub manage to get it rather than risk revealing himself and maybe somehow catching a stray shot from the Giulio Cesare, because who knows where the turrets would have been pointed on that thing. So that's the last of the engine boosts. He now really does have to grab the C cap. They are decently ahead on points. There's about 2.5 minutes left, so yes, they do just basically have to stay alive and not do anything silly, and they will win this. And you know, no spoilers, but they are going to win this at this point. I wouldn't necessarily show this if it was a loss, because Marten would have had to derp very hard in order to die to the Caesarea. It's not like there's some other sneaky boat that's left at this point. I mean, the fact that he did fire and then got spotted by the sub and then was able to kill the sub was probably a good thing in the long run. But arguably, maybe he should have gotten the you know, maybe there would have been in a slightly more secure position to have gotten the sea cap. But it turned out not to really matter in the scheme of things. So yeah, we can't really say, oh well, that was a massive mistake. Really, it's just the kind of slight miscalculation that happens sometimes, that in a different set of circumstances might have mattered, but in this set of circumstances did not. So the Caesarea, I mean, they're just doing what they can to get some more points at this stage. There's no way to win this unless they somehow manage to get both Marten and the Cachalot, but both of them are playing it very safe. And even though they're making an attempt to deny them getting any points from the mid-cap, which is fair enough, there's no way for them to win this. Like, there just isn't. So, yeah, it really is just a matter of, can Marten maybe get a little bit more damage in this last minute? And, yeah, they've gotten the torpedoes back in time for that. And, well, there's one hit, so that's alright. And they've done a spread of their second lot of torpedoes, and well, you never know, we might get even a bit more, which would just be the cherry on the cake at that point, because we are almost at 150,000. So taking a risk by firing from smoke, because of course they can try and blind fire back, but it just gets off a couple of salvos and then gets to safety, just to be extra cautious about it, because yeah, and also does get a final torpedo hit. No fifth kill though. He could have had a crack if he'd taken the Alba, but at that point, with the hit points he was on, clearly decided that yeah, being safe was the better choice. So yeah, 160,000 damage, a whole bunch of medals, just over 3,000 base XP. And that was quite the match, all told, as you can see there. Pretty decent amount of fire damage. I mean, these 120mm guns are not to be underestimated. They have a 5-second reload, so you know they're reasonably fast for the tier. And although they maybe don't quite pack the punch of, say, the 130mm Soviet guns, they're not to be underestimated at all. And that goes for the tech tree ships as well. So, yeah, once again, apologies to my patrons, and also a big thank you to my patrons for sticking with me anyway. And, yeah, hopefully we will see some more of these Patreon replays now going forward. I mean, obviously, also, it always depends on people sending them to me, but I shall endeavour to actually get them out when they are sent to me. So, yeah. So that's it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and if you did, you can do all the usual things down underneath it. And of course, as always, stay tuned for more.